Welcome to our initial recording of our as of yet unnamed podcast. I'm John Karolus here with
Paul Horstmeyer.
We are both second year students at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, recording to you live from our on-campus housing.
That's right. John and I do not live together, but we are in his apartment in the wonderful woods.
That's right, yeah.
Which is what we call our married housing here.
So if you're able to survive this whole podcast, we encourage you to leave a comment or two and maybe suggest a name for us. We've been thinking about Before the Pulpit or Before Behind the Pulpit. Paul had a couple ideas.
But they were taken. My best idea that I was so excited about was Masters of Divinity. Little play on words for the degree we get from Concordia Seminary, but that has already been taken. So no need to look that up, though. You can just listen to our podcast. Don't listen to their podcast. But...
Unless you are that podcast, in which case
we appreciate all you do.
We like it. We like the work you're doing. So this being the first episode, we just kind of want to explain what it is we're after. We want to put together a little publication, a little digital memorandum of the experience of a seminary student and give listeners the perspective of a student and give people who don't have the same experiences or same interests as we do the chance to understand things from our viewpoint as people as men preparing to be pastors in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, as 20-somethings who are married, who want to serve the Lord in this capacity, who feel called to the ministry. And so this is for prospective students maybe who are thinking about going to seminary themselves, or curious people who want to know what it is we're all about. And we're hoping that by doing these recordings, we're able to open up your eyes and ears to the life of a seminarian.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's exactly right. Maybe we'll, as we go on these next weeks, we'll add in some segments of maybe interviewing some unique students we have here, because we have a lot of different people with a lot of unique stories and backgrounds. A lot of people for this being their second career. They used to have some other type of job, and they've decided to join seminary in hopes to becoming a pastor. So yeah, but if you have any ideas too, we'd welcome those for things that you'd like to hear about from us. Again, it's been our impression that not many people know exactly what goes on at seminary and why we're here. So we just wanted to take the time to share some of those experiences.
Yeah, St. Louis is a funny city because it's been the focal point of a lot of national attention because of some of the political unrest and some of those things. We're not really trying to get into that a whole lot, but because of the history of the city and being located in the Midwest and also a central point of transcontinental transportation up until the airport age, there's a lot of history and there's a lot of theological, religious grounding that's part of this city. And so when we say we're students at the seminary, when someone like at the department, at the store, asks us what we do or why we're here, when they see our out-of-state licenses or something, we tell them we go to the seminary. Usually they will know what we're talking about, because there's a Lutheran school here that we attend. There's a Catholic seminary. There's a Presbyterian seminary. There's a few other Baptist schools around, and a few other public universities and community schools. And all of those are pretty richly involved in a strong religious tradition that goes along with St. Louis as sort of a city with French roots, so deep Catholic roots as well. And so for those of you who don't come from that kind of context, or maybe are coming from outside of the Midwest, hopefully we're able to shed light on that sort of phenomenon too, so that when you decide maybe that you're going to seminary and you start telling your friends and they ask you what the heck does that mean, maybe you can point them our way or tell them a few of the things that we want to share with you as well.
Yeah, we're the seminary in flyover country, but we'll show you that that's not all that bad.
Bearing our awkwardness on this first episode, just just bear with us as we hope to discuss different topics such as what it's like to be a returning student in the unique program model that we have here, what it's like to experience a curriculum review and renovation, both in the previous model and the new model of what curriculum looks like. We're hoping to talk about and sort of illustrate to people who are curious what a vicarage is all about and what it means to be a vicar in the Lutheran Church today, because just with the different ways people become pastors, we're hoping that we can explain a little more clearly from an honest student perspective how it is that kind of students end up coming here, how they end up becoming pastors, and what it is they're doing with their lives at this point.
Definitely. And you know, John, before we go any further, we probably should give a little bit more information about us.
That's a good point, Paul. Why don't you enlighten our beautiful listeners on who you are, where you come from, who's in your life right now, and how you got here.
Awesome. Yeah. So like I said, my name's Paul Horstmeyer. As you can tell from the last name, pretty German roots. I am from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and for a lot of our listeners, that city bears a lot of significance. So does St. Louis. And for those of you that don't know, Fort Wayne is the city of our other seminary, the sister seminary of our denomination. And so that's where I was born and raised. I went to Concordia, Chicago, known as Concordia River Forest, to some, and that's where I did all my undergrad studies. I studied theology with a minor in math, so very riveting stuff. Met my wife there, Mary, and we've been married for a little over a year now, and it's been a great time. So, see anything else that I should include with that?
Just maybe why you ended up at seminary.
Yeah, so, well, I attended church pretty much all my life, most Sundays growing up. I have an uncle that's still in the ministry, still serving as a pastor in Evansville, Indiana. And he's the only minister in our family. So it wasn't a thing where, every generation had been a pastor or anything. But, I'd been exposed to pastor life and everything. I wanted to be a math teacher, actually, which is why the math minor came out there. Yeah, wow. You might not have known that about me.
No.
So it still takes me a while to subtract change, but I could do a derivative for you if you want. So that's pretty useless, huh? So, so I was studying that. I was studying secondary education with a math focus. But as I started to meet, honestly, the biggest influence for me wanting to come to seminary and come to St. Louis even too is meeting the people that I did while I was at Concordia, Chicago, who were either planning to go to seminary or that were pastors, and they had such an impact on my life and my faith, and I really wanted to do that same thing for other people. And so that was really, I think, the main driving force that I can really see, all the examples that I've had to sort of bring me here at seminary. So
yeah, great. As for me, it's pretty standard story. I come from northern Wisconsin, a small town called Antigo, which is sort of northwest of Green Bay, Wisconsin, home of the greatest Packer team, home of the greatest football team to grace the planet.
I'll give you that, John, because I couldn't care less about football, so you could have the monopoly on that.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, being from Indiana, it's not too much of a surprise. But anyways, my dad is a pastor there in Antigo, and he's been there for about 11 or 12 years at Peace Lutheran Church. Prior to that, he's been a pastor since he got out of seminary himself in 1986 and has served in Florida and then Wisconsin. And so I grew up in northern Wisconsin my whole life. My mom was also a professional church worker, Christian school teacher, and now works full-time for a Christian day camp, summer camp. And there's been a lot of pastors and theology in my family. I've got an uncle who's a pastor. I've got, I think, 2 great uncles who were pastors. I've got
Wow.
a cousin at the seminary in Fort Wayne. And my 2 older sisters are both professional full-time church workers as well. One of them who is in Gainesville, Florida. The other one who is studying for her deaconess certification here in St.
right.
Louis right now.
Who is not your younger sister, but
No.
is in fact your
She
older
is
sister.
But it's her first year. So around here, I tend to know the ropes a little bit better than she does, at least for now. So like I was saying, 3 of my parents' 4 kids that ended up in church work, and I'm one of those 3. It's about as standard textbook style as you can get. I went to Concordia University, Wisconsin, which is located in Mequon, which is near Milwaukee. I studied philosophy and theological languages. Still picked up quite a bit of theology while I was there. Graduated in 2016 and enrolled in seminary that fall, and have been here since, enjoying it. My wife and I both are from the same small town in northern Wisconsin, from Antigo. We went to high school together, started dating that senior year, and stuck it out through college. And not only it was
there were some good times.
There was a lot of good times, mostly good times, almost 100% good times.
Oh, yes.
It's amazing. Yeah. So we just decided to call it a wedding. So we got married this past June, and have been enjoying married life for the last few months. Recently moving on campus, enjoying a new apartment, and settling into the campus community, sort of living in a school community, which is a little bit different than you're used to, because it's not dorms, it's not normal residential housing for on campus.
This is a pretty unique housing situation compared to other educational institutions.
Yeah, absolutely. So we live in a four unit building with one other couple who lives in one of the other 4 units, and we're located a soccer field away from all the academic buildings and things like that. So that's my story. That's sort of how I ended up here, and as time goes on, as we get together and record a few more episodes, we're hoping that you will join us for the ride as we talk about our experiences, talk about life, and hopefully end up with a little bit more substantial conversation. But now that you know where we're coming from, you can understand our perspectives as well. We're studying for Masters of Divinity, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about what exactly that means?
Yeah, so now when I first heard Master of Divinity, I thought of like sorcery and future telling, but that is not what we're learning.
No, absolutely not.
No, not that I know of, at least. That might be an elective somewhere, but no. So Master of Divinity is the traditional name of the degree for a practicing minister. So this is a master's program that we have here, but it's the MDiv, the Master of Divinity degree, is not your normal MA. Whereas an MA or maybe an MBA, those are more academic degrees, whereas an MDiv is more of a professional or practical degree. So we're really, as you would know and guess, studying to be able to do some sort of profession. And now also, what's kind of unique with this place too is that we do get the MDiv, which is the degree showing that we've completed all the studies that we think are important for helping us be formed into pastors. But that's not necessarily what sort of puts us out there and makes us a pastor. Whereas we get a degree, but we also get a call.
Yeah. So it's a little bit different than your typical grad school, where you just sort of pick a school that's good and you go there and get your degree, and then you put it on your resume and you hope that an employer picks you up somewhere along the line. Instead, the way that our program works is we sign up for the program, we go through the application process, we earn our Masters of Divinity, and over the course of the 4 years that our degree program is, the full-time staff positions and faculty positions who are in charge of distributing us among empty positions for pastors across the United States within the Lutheran Church try to match us up with a church that suits our skills and needs that match up with what we can fulfill as a pastor. So we're not just studying to earn a degree and put it on a resume. Instead, we are studying to become a pastor for a specific context, for a specific church, in order that we might serve them to the best of our ability. Obviously, this isn't strictly an academic endeavor. There's a strong belief, there's a strong sense of spirituality involved with this too. We hold that God puts us exactly where he needs us, and we trust the process of placement and synod organization that it takes to get us into the position that we end up in after our 4 years. And so the way that process sort of works is our church body, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and synod is just another word for group or convocation or organized structure, community, is broken up into different districts, which sometimes are states, sometimes are half states, sometimes are
regions,
a few states. And then each of those districts has an administrative president, and that president helps communicate the needs of different churches who maybe don't have a pastor, are looking for another pastor, or need someone on staff like a pastor, and communicates those needs and articulates those needs to the seminary, where they get together as one big group. They look over the students' files, and they pray about the students and the needs of the churches, and they try to fill the positions that are necessary. So that's sort of how we end up after we've completed our program. But the way that the program is situated, it's 4 years in this seminary, but it's not just 4 years in the classroom. Paul, what does the 4 years of seminary kind of look like on paper?
Yeah, so the traditional 4-year structure is 2 years sort of as a residential program. So you have 2 years here where you're taking classes, you're doing your work at a church that you're assigned to, you're doing other real life experiences and educational opportunities. So you have 2 years of that where it looks a lot like regular school. Your third year is what we would call the vicarage, which, for no better word, it's like an internship pretty much, where we are shipped out to a church somewhere in the United States, and we sort of play pastor for a little bit, but we're sent to a church that has a senior pastor there that's experienced and wants to help, a vicar, as we'd call ourselves that third year, help us learn the ropes in a lot of ways. And it's another step for the seminary faculty to see that, this is a good fit for us. And so with that third year is somewhere outside the seminary. And then we come back for fourth year to do a lot of debriefing and improvements in last areas. And then in the April of our fourth year, so just before we'd graduate with the degree, we would get our placement at a church, our call. We are told where we'll be going to serve more or less permanently once we're graduated in May. So that's what our 4 years looks like.
Yeah, and to be sure, it's a pretty unorthodox model of earning a degree and going into a profession, because in most cases, even if you're going to be a pastor, it starts sort of with the church, and the church realizes they need a pastor, so they hold a meeting and they decide, well, what kind of qualifications do we want this student or do we want this new pastor to have, whether it's a college degree or a master's degree or certain years of experience. And then they sort of communicate to their governing body, whatever synod or whatever church body they're a part of, that they need someone that meets these qualifications, and then the governing body puts them into contact with some potential candidates. For the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod and for fourth year students who are finishing up at the seminary, you don't really know where you're going to be going until April most of the time of that last year. And obviously this can be a little bit nerve-wracking. This can be a little bit anxiety inducing process, especially for those who grew up outside of the Lutheran tradition. And it seems a little bit uncertain, seems a little bit foolish, but really it's a system that's designed to minimize sort of pastors being put into churches where they aren't going to be able to flourish. And instead, it pairs them up with a ministry opportunity where both sides of it, the pastor and the church, are able to grow and succeed with each other in a healthy relationship. And so, I guess the concise way of putting it is we're students at the seminary studying to be pastors, and in studying to be a pastor, we earn a master's divinity degree, but the degree is not the primary focus of our studies here. Instead, it's the formation of what it takes to be a pastoral leader.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's a lot going on in the head, but also with the heart and the hands, right? Where they want to make us into certain kinds of people that are really fit for everything that pastoral ministry would require of us. And John, I remember thinking back in undergrad when I started getting more interested in being a pastor, and I know a lot of the guys that are with me that also want to be pastors, shared the same feeling that we just wanted to get out there. We just wanted to get out there, and we thought seminary just felt like more red tape, more hoops to jump through. I mean, it's 4 years. It's not, a lot of times it's not cheap.
Absolutely.
You put yourself through. I mean, that's a long master's degree, and for compared to other professions.
Yeah, and say if you've got a wife who's working, or even raising children, to be somewhere for 2 years and then gone for another year and back in for a third year and then out somewhere full time. It's when you look at it on paper, it can be a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
But really, this, it's a program that's been through the test of time.
Yep.
And we've got a church body whose interests, I think, are still pure, whose goals are to serve God and do His will, and to grow His church. And you see that reflected in the student body. You see that reflected in the staff and faculty here, and you see that reflected in the intentions behind things like the curriculum change and the academic model, which will be topics of future discussions between Paul and I. So so we'll probably end up wrapping things up here, and that way you've only had to suffer through about 25 minutes of recording. But thanks for coming along with us. We hope that you stick around. I'm John Karolus again, second-year student at the seminary, and I'm here with my partner, Paul, and we hope that you join us next time.
Yes. Thank you, John. Yes, Paul Horstmeyer here signing off. We appreciate you listening. Again, send us suggestions or ideas for a name of the podcast. We are still coming up dry with something creative.
As soon as we have a name, though, we will be sure to start a Gmail account. We'll have a YouTube channel. We'll have a SoundCloud account. We're going to have our own Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook pages. And all of those things, as well as our student emails, which will be posted on those platforms, are ways that you can contact us and ask us questions, offer us constructive feedback, or mean feedback. Feedback.
Yeah, we could take it.
Whatever.
We got thick skin.
Yeah, just don't be too direct for me, okay?
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks for listening, and we look forward to sharing with you next time.